she came to me and we talked about what to do about that. And the first concern was to learn how this happened so that we can talk about preventing it from happening to other people. And there are many responses that the hospital could have had. Upon being notified of this event, they could have turned a deaf ear, or they could have tried to deflect blame or confuse the issue, or worse, try to put some responsibility on the patient herself in some way, which I didn't see possible, but they could have done that. Had they done any of that, those feelings of, I think, frustration would have turned into feelings of betrayal and would have just exacerbated the whole situation and very likely resulted in litigation. To the credit of Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, they opened the door to us having a meeting with them to talk about why this happened, how can it be avoided in the future, what protocols are they talking about, divorced from any discussion about compensation at that point. It was about just transparency and disclosure. The meeting went very well. I was obviously there with Tricia. She felt comfortable having me next to her, although quite frankly, I didn't play much of a role. There was an attorney for the hospital as well who also bought into this concept, the importance of having an open meeting, transparency, disclosure. And so the meeting went very well. There was a physician from the hospital who explained exactly what happened. The lawyers more or less stayed out of the way. We let the conversation happen between healthcare provider and patient in the way that it's supposed to happen. This was by no means a deposition. It was just an opportunity for there to be a sharing of information with the hope and expectation that this would lead to a resolution, not just a resolution in terms of financial compensation, which we did achieve, very fair compensation given what happened and the delay, but a resolution that involved feeling good about what happened here. Tricia continued to get treatment here once she was diagnosed. And initially, people were telling her not to because of the mistake that had occurred, but she put that aside because she knew that this is a place where she had been treated well in the past, and despite this incident, they were going to treat her well in the future. The negotiations over what kind of compensation is fair and reasonable in this instance took place between me and the attorney who represented the hospital. Very amicable. There was no attempt to posture or to get aggressive or anything like that. We both were reasonable, and we realized that, thankfully, due to Tricia's diligence, she was able to detect her own cancer not too much later after it was detectable on film here at Beth Israel. And fortunately, after doing some investigation and waiting this out a little bit, we were able to discover that there would be no long-term impact of that on her, thankfully. And so we took that into consideration when we were thinking about what's the right number for her. And once we got to a number, I reduced my fee to take into consideration the amount of time that I had to put in, and only that amount of time, so that Tricia could feel as though she was fairly compensated. Now, quite frankly, as any doctor would, a lawyer has to advise his or her client of the options, the alternatives, the risks, the benefits of resolving it now versus 3-4 years of litigation. And so, while we were very comfortable and confident that there would be no long-term ramifications of this, it is possible, and I told her this, that if we dragged it out for 3 years, that there might be more compensation available. But she would have to live through the experience over and over again. It would likely turn potentially hostile, or not hostile, but it wouldn't be as friendly a resolution. And she was aware of all that. And I said, I think what they're offering is very fair, and I think you should take it, but you should know of this possibility. And Tricia, quite frankly, said to me, that's not how I want this to end. I feel good about the way this resolved. I'm very happy with how things wrapped up, and I'm not interested in dragging this out for years down the road, just to see if maybe I can get more money in the end. I think plaintiff's lawyers should be open-minded about it. The goal here is to get the right compensation for the plaintiff, for the patient, hope and expect that some changes are going to be made through this disclosure process so that remedies can be put into place to prevent it from happening to someone else. And importantly, to take into consideration the emotional well-being of your client. I'm an officer of the Massachusetts Bar Association, and I'm also the representative of the Mass Bar Association on macrame for purposes of ensuring that patient rights are protected. I often jokingly refer to myself as the skunk at the garden party to make sure that everybody keeps in mind, how do we do this, but how do we do it without accidentally, I don't think intentionally, but accidentally trampling on or stepping on patient rights. And so, to the credit of macrame, they have embraced that concept completely. We have engaged the Mass Bar Association on this concept, meaning that we've had a forum take place where we talked about this program to educate lawyers about the program so that many plaintiffs' lawyers can buy into this and understand that this is not an attempt by the hospital to shortchange the patient. It is not a wolf in sheep's clothing. It is an attempt to do the right thing and to enlist lawyers who are as interested in doing the right thing as the hospital is. And that forum that we had at the Mass Bar Association was extremely well received. Very prominent plaintiffs' lawyers were in the audience who have made a good living doing this and appreciate that this is the right thing to do in many contexts. And we're hoping that the same way this happened in Tricia's case, it happens in other cases as well, where there's not this fear that if a lawyer's present, that it's going to be an opportunity for free discovery, that we shouldn't say too much to the patient because the patient's going to use that against us later. There's an ethical obligation on the physician's part to be forthcoming, to disclose what happened. There's now a legal obligation. The Mass Medical Society with the Massachusetts Bar Association and the Mass Academy of Trial Attorneys all came together to create legislation that is designed and intended to facilitate this exact type of disclosure and transparency, a very positive direction, I think, for patient safety. Originally, I think a lot of lawyers were very suspicious of the program. For years, this is not how things have worked. Patient is harmed, instantly both sides dig in their heels. Maybe plaintiffs' lawyers get aggressive right from the beginning. Maybe the hospital and its insurance carriers get very defensive right from the beginning. And there's instant attempts to deflect or deny, none of which was healthy whatsoever. And so I think it's taken a while, but in the last 5 years, there's been a sea change. I think, and we're seeing the beginning of it. I think, I can't speak for the entire plaintiffs' bar, but I can certainly say that a lot of plaintiffs' lawyers like myself really respect the program, want this to work, see it as an opportunity to make some real positive change, because a lot of lawyers who do this work are not out there for the dollars, they're out there to improve patient safety. I don't think it's a secret that our healthcare system can really be improved upon from a patient safety perspective. We've all heard the statistics about how many people are being harmed and who are dying from medical errors every single year. The statistics are astounding. In some realms, it's $100,000 according to the Institute of Medicine. Other times, it's 400,000 people, not dollars. 100,000 people are dying every year according to the Institute of Medicine. Other times, it's 400,000 people dying per year. Whatever the number is, it's too big. And so this is a means of improving patient safety because you're facilitating the kind of disclosure, the kind of transparency that, as in Tricia's case, leads to cures so that a patient isn't allowed to leave the hospital but without being told that a follow-up test should take place to rule out or rule in a suspicious mass. And I can only see it as positive.